The skies above Kael'thar boiled with fire and ash. Towers that once touched the stars were nothing but scorched bones jutting from the ground. Smoke curled around the spires, clinging like dying prayers. The palace walls trembled, not from artillery, but from what followed it. No one spoke of victory anymore. They only whispered about surviving another hour. High Lady Virelia stood at the center of the shattered throne hall, her blue skin glinting faintly in the dying light. Her eyes stayed on the horizon. Somewhere beyond the storm, the capital's last shield dome flickered under a fresh barrage. Behind her, advisors argued over nothing: evacuation plans, diplomatic overtures, plea signals, useless motions. Every system they reached out to offered the same silence. The Draven had arrived a month ago. Beasts engineered for annihilation, armored in bone, powered by hate. They didn't negotiate. They consumed. Planet by planet, moon by moon, they crept across the star maps, a cancer that reason could not touch. And now they had come for Kael'thar. Legends among her people told of ancient protectors, warriors who answered no counsel, who wore no crest but fought like gods. They were said to appear only when a world was past hope. They were called humans. Virelia once believed the story. She used to recite it when she was young, her voice echoing in the crystalline gardens of her youth. Now she saw it for what it was: myth. A fairy tale for children to sleep through nightmares. A comms officer ran in, his face pale under his helmet. "My lady, the north wall has fallen. They're inside the city. We estimate hours, maybe less." She nodded once. Her orders had already been sent. What little resistance remained would fall back to the citadel. A symbolic gesture, nothing more. Kael'thar would burn, and she would die with it. In the streets, her people screamed. Civilians ran with whatever they could carry, flames painting their shadows long across the ruins. Soldiers held back the tide with dwindling ammunition and failing armor. The sound of bone blades striking metal rang louder than thunder. She walked through the last corridor of the palace. No guards followed. They had either fallen or disobeyed their final duty to try and save others. Good. She needed no witnesses for what came next. A shuttle awaited her, small and fast, hidden behind an auxiliary hangar. She had one chance. Not to escape, there was nowhere left to go, but to deliver herself to the enemy and buy a few more hours for the evacuation. Her life wasn't worth more than that. She was taken before the Draven warlord at the heart of the city. It stood thrice her height, its face a mass of shifting plates, its arms thick with muscle and old blood. Around it, her people's dead lay scattered, their armor crushed into their bodies like eggshells. The Draven made no speech. It grinned. Chains bound her wrists. They paraded her through what remained of her capital, a mockery of triumph. The monstrous titan followed, its tail dragging through the ruins like a butcher's cleaver. Behind her, the last hope of her world collapsed into smoke. In the silence of that walk, her mind turned inward. Stories came unbidden. The ones her father told when she was small. Of humans that came when all else failed. Of black ships that appeared with no warning. Of warriors that moved like shadows and struck like vengeance. She had asked once why they vanished from the stars. He had replied, "Because we stopped deserving them." Thunder cracked above, unnatural and jagged. She looked up. A storm? No, something else. The sky split open like glass. Light fell from the heavens, not gold, not red, but white. Blinding. Pure. Screams followed. Not hers. Not her people's. Draven. Panic swept through their ranks. The warlord turned, snarling. From the breach above, dark shapes dropped like meteors. Not ships. Soldiers. They didn't descend. They fell. The first wave landed without sound. Black armor, seamless. No visible insignia. No voice. Just motion. Fast, brutal, surgical. The nearest Draven lunged. It didn't finish the movement. The human, a myth, she realized, standing just meters away, fired once. The beam didn't glow. It burned, silent and absolute. The creature's chest caved inward, its body folding like paper under gravity. Another turned to flee. A second human was already behind it. No sound. No threat. Just finality. Then came the rest. A line formed between her and the Draven ranks. 10 humans. No more. The creatures outnumbered them 100 to 1. It didn't matter. One raised a hand. A signal. The Draven surged forward, rage-blinded. The humans responded with clinical violence. No wasted motion. No unnecessary effort. They moved like machines, but she saw the truth in their precision. This wasn't automation. This was mastery. The warlord screamed. It hurled itself into the battle, limbs tearing through air. A human met it mid-charge. The impact shook the ground. For a moment, dust obscured everything. Then the Titan fell. The human walked through its corpse, armor still steaming. Virelia stared, breathless. Her chains burned against her skin, but she didn't move. Couldn't. One of the humans approached her. Smaller than the others, but not weaker. Its visor retracted. A face stared back. Pale skin, cold eyes, unreadable. "Are you the one they took?" the voice asked. Male. Calm. Terrifyingly human. She nodded. He raised a hand. The chains snapped, not from strength, but from tech she couldn't comprehend. "You're safe now," he said, as casually as one might comment on the weather. "Why?" she asked, voice cracking. "Why are you here?" He looked past her, to the burning skyline. "Because someone still remembers." Sirens wailed across the city. A second wave of dropships descended. Not warships, medevacs, supply units, barricade builders. Behind the soldiers came engineers, medics, machines that began stabilizing what was left of her world. Not a conquest. A rescue. She followed him as the human formation moved forward. The Draven were in full retreat. Their command chain shattered. Their discipline gone. In less than an hour, a war they had nearly won had turned to ashes in their hands. She turned to the man beside her. "We thought you were legend." He didn't smile. "We are." Another soldier approached, helmet cracked from a glancing hit. "We secured the North Quarter. Survivors found. Minimal casualties." "Minimal?" she asked, blinking. "You fought an army." The soldier looked at her for a second. "We've fought worse." They passed a wall covered in blood and carved bone. Human tech pulsed at its base, scanning, logging, erasing horrors. "We broadcasted distress," she said. "To everyone. You were silent." He stopped walking. "We listened for what matters." "And this matters?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. They moved through the remains of her city. Draven bodies littered the roads. Some disintegrated by weapons she had no name for. Others frozen mid-attack. Precision. Strategy. Purpose. She saw children being pulled from rubble by humans who knelt gently, armor smeared with soot. Not once did they ask for thanks. Not once did they pause to be praised. "You were gone," she said again. "We were watching." "From where?" His answer was almost a whisper. "Everywhere." The sound of battle faded behind them. The sky, once crimson, cleared. For the first time in weeks, stars became visible. She looked up, eyes wide. One of them flared brighter than the rest. A satellite? A ship? The human ships were gone. Not a single one remained in Kael'thar's sky. They had come and departed like ghosts, leaving behind only a memory, a wreckage saved from fire, and a name that now held meaning again. In the days that followed, engineers worked in triple shifts to restore power grid. Medical teams ran out of supplies long before they ran out of patients. But it was not the destruction that captured the planet's mind. It was the precision with which salvation had arrived. Virelia no longer questioned their reality. She no longer thought in terms of myth or miracle. The humans had arrived with purpose, delivered without warning, and left without reward. That was no legend. That was strategy. That was design. The central datanet overflowed with footage. Everyone had seen them now, their armor, their weapons, their silence. Theories multiplied. Some called them remnants of a forgotten empire. Others, agents of a force that worked beyond the borders of known space. But the one truth remained: they fought only when the end was certain. They arrived only when it was already too late. And yet, this time, it hadn't been. 1 week after the retreat, a signal came through the outer relay. It bore no source, no designation, no diplomatic prefix. It was a location and a timestamp. Nothing more. Virelia knew it wasn't a request. It was an instruction. She left that same hour. The vessel that took her was the fastest on Kaeldar, stripped of ceremony, its crew hand-picked. They didn't ask questions. The coordinates led deep into the veiled verge, a dead zone of starless space, navigated only by the desperate and the mad. But the ship slipped through without interference, as if the void had made space for her. The destination was a station, if it could be called that. A structure invisible to any scan, invisible to the eye until it was almost too close to avoid. Matte black, unmarked, impossible to measure. It orbited nothing. It needed nothing. It waited. She docked. Alone. No greeting came. The airlock opened on its own. Inside was silence. Not sterile, not cold, watchful. Every step she took felt catalogued, but not judged. Then the door closed behind her, and the lights shifted. He was there. The same human who had shattered the warlord's advance now stood waiting, unchanged. Still in armor. Still carrying the weight of decisions no one else could understand. She nodded. "You summoned me." "I offered direction," he replied. "You chose to follow it." "Why?" "Because we don't always leave a world behind. Sometimes we prepare it." "For what?" He studied her, as if measuring the weight of her question. "For truth." The wall behind him opened. Not mechanically, fluidly like space bending. A room emerged, filled not with weapons or data but history. Star maps rewritten, battle logs never archived, names erased from galactic records. And at the center, a chronicle of human intervention stretching back longer than her species had documented flight. "You've done this before," she said quietly. "1,000 times," he confirmed. "And you never stayed?" "We're not meant to." She reached toward one display. A hologram showed a planet consumed by fire, then cleared, then rebuilt. "This world isn't on any registry." He nodded. "It doesn't exist anymore. We made sure of that." She turned sharply. "You destroyed it?" "No. We erased its memory. The species survived. But the history was corrected." "Why?" He didn't blink. "Because not every civilization is ready to know who saves them." She stared at him for a long time. "And what makes us different?" "You saw us. That's all it takes?" "It's more than most." Her hand trembled slightly. "Why hide? Why operate in shadows?" He walked to the far end of the chamber. "Because visibility invites interference. Empires try to possess what they don't understand. They try to control what should remain independent." "So you're protecting yourselves?" "No," he said. "We're protecting everyone else." She narrowed her eyes. "From what?" His silence was answer enough. He turned and gestured. The far wall dissolved into starlight. Dozens of red dots flared across systems she'd never seen. Draven incursions weren't random. They weren't desperate. They were coordinated. Trial runs. By whom? Something worse. She didn't speak. Her breath caught. "We've faced them before," he said. "Briefly. Long enough to understand they're patient. They push other species ahead of them. Test the cracks in civilization. When resistance fades, they follow. And you're fighting them. We're delaying them." She took a step closer. "Then help us. Form alliances. Stand with us." His voice remained level. "You're not ready. We survived a Draven siege. You survived because we intervened. Then teach us." He looked away. "That isn't always our call." Her anger rose. "Then why am I here?" "Because you still believe in myths." "That's not a reason." It's the best one. She turned away, staring at the red-lit systems blinking with quiet dread. How many have fallen? Too many. And how many know? None of them. Her voice dropped. You're alone. His answer came fast. We're never alone. Others entered the room. Humans, silent, watchful. Every one of them wore the same armor. None showed rank. None looked curious. They had been listening from the beginning. She scanned their faces. Some bore scars. Some looked impossibly young. All carried the same quiet focus. One stepped forward. A woman, taller than most, eyes cold. You asked why we hide. Here is your answer. Because we are not meant to lead. We are meant to end the war before it begins. Virelia met her gaze. What happens if you fail? The woman's response was immediate. Then you'll never know we existed. The chamber shifted again. Another map. This one showing movement. Dozens of faint pulses pushing outward from the verge. Human deployments. Silent interventions. Doomed planets reversed. Atrocities undone. You control history, Virelia whispered. We manage consequences, said the woman. She shook her head. This is impossible. No, said the man. It's necessary. The room dimmed. The lights softened. The maps vanished. Why me? Virelia asked. Why show this to me? Because you're the first to ask without demanding. She clenched her jaw. Then what happens now? We test you. For what? Memory. A chair unfolded behind her. She sat, uncertain. A panel appeared in front of her. Lights scanned her face. Her memories. Her thoughts. Then silence. You remember what you saw? Asked the male. Yes. Good. Then we're done. Wait, what about the others? They won't remember. She shot to her feet. You're going to wipe their minds? No, said the woman. We already did. Rage flared in her. You can't do that. We can, said the man. We did. You saved them. And protected them. From the truth. From the weight of it. She stared, shaking. You want me to carry this alone? No, he said. We want to see if you can. She paced. Her voice cracked. You don't trust us. We don't trust anyone. Then why let me go? Because belief matters. The wall closed again. The station dimmed. A voice echoed through the chamber. Not from any speaker, not from any one of them. It was old. It was human. But not alive. It recited. History belongs to the victor. Memory belongs to the witness. Survival belongs to the prepared. But truth belongs to those willing to bear it. Then silence. The reinforcements from Kaeldar came weeks later, no longer just soldiers, but disciples. Every planet they liberated learned faster. Every retreat became a lesson. They didn't fight for territory. They fought for time. And behind every operation, a shadow remained. Unmarked ships arrived only after the battle ended. They never landed. They never spoke. But on the ground, survivors reported flashes in the sky, bursts of light, trails of figures who never showed up on scans. Medics found enemy weapons deactivated by impossible means. Command systems hijacked by code no species could trace. The humans were watching. And Virelia knew they were testing her. Her network grew. A dozen systems aligned with her. Not because of promises, but because she told the truth. That war was already here, and peace was no longer an option. Some doubted. Some fled. But enough remained. One planet rebelled. Accused her of fabricating myths to gain control. They broadcasted accusations across every open channel. The next day, that planet lost all power. No ships entered orbit. No weapons were fired. But everything stopped: communications, shielding, sensors. The entire defense grid deactivated for 9 minutes and 43 seconds. Just long enough for every leader to feel exposed. When power returned, one message sat in their system queue. She speaks because we allow it. The rebellion ended. No one ever challenged her again. But she didn't become a tyrant. She became a student. She studied the patterns left behind by the humans, their timelines, their methods. She began to predict them. Not where they would appear, but when. And each time she was right, she left a signal. Nothing direct, nothing traceable. Just a confirmation: we see you. We are learning. And they always responded. Sometimes it was a coded string in the debris of an enemy ship. Sometimes it was a shift in a star's pulse. Once it was a child's drawing found in a refugee shelter, depicting a soldier with no face standing between fire and sky. Every time it meant the same thing: continue. The war escalated. The proxy armies were replaced with smarter designs. Enemies learned to mimic organic strategy. They captured data, forged identities, corrupted command network. Her people faced a new enemy, one that didn't just kill, but infiltrated. She formed a counterforce. Not spies. Ghosts. Recruits trained in silence. They answered to no rank. They reported only to her. They were given no name. But the enemies began to fall before battle even started. Supply lines collapsed under false routing. Leaders disappeared mid-speech. Whole fleets never arrived. Her enemies called it sabotage. She called it evolution. She no longer waited for orders. She issued them. And with each battle, each recovered system, the truth became harder to ignore. The humans had left the shadows, not in appearance, but in influence. Her forces mirrored them. Not in tech, but in execution. She wasn't copying them. She was becoming one of them. And then came the fracture. One of her commandants, once loyal, broke formation. He claimed she had gone too far. That in trying to become like them, she had lost what made their people different. She didn't argue. She let him speak. Then she gave him coordinate. He followed them. Alone. What he found was a world still burning, orbiting a dead star. He found the wreckage of a civilization wiped from history. And in the center of that silence, he found a human. Alive. Waiting. The man said nothing. Only handed him a single file. A recording. It played once, then erased itself. When the commandant returned, he never spoke of what he saw. But he resigned his post. Not in protest, but in humility. He joined the training halls. Not to lead. To learn. And Varelia continued. She spoke less. She listened more. Not to advisors, but to the silence between events. She began to recognize patterns in randomness. Signals hidden in collapse. Intent behind accident. It wasn't just an invasion. It was a cleansing. The force behind it was methodical. It erased civilizations that questioned. It left alive only those who complied. The galaxy hadn't noticed, because it had been slow. Surgical. Untraceable. But now it was accelerating. Varelia gathered her forces. Not for an attack. For a message. They broadcasted on every channel. Not to allies. To enemies. The words were simple. We are no longer waiting. The response came 12 hours later. Not a message. A demonstration. 6 colonies disappeared. Not destroyed, erased. Every trace removed. Time-stamped records vanished. Memories fragmented. Even those who had lived there could no longer recall names. It was worse than death. It was nullification. But she was ready. She had prepared. Backup records restored identities. Reconstructed family histories. Decryption teams recompiled erased thought patterns. The humans had shown her how to fight memory warfare. And she won. Her enemies began to fracture. Whatever force drove them had underestimated humanity's gift. Not strength, not speed, but memory. The ability to remember pain and still move forward. To carry truth even when it crushed them. She broadcasted again. This time, the message was not to her enemies. It was to the humans. 4 words. We are with you. The stars shifted. No reply came. But everyone felt it. Then one day they arrived. Not in secret. Not as myth. A fleet of black-armored ships dropped into orbit above her central world. Not a threat. A signal. Every sensor watched them. Every being held their breath. One ship descended. She met them alone. He stepped forward. The same human who once stood in silence while her world burned. This time, he removed his helmet. His face was not extraordinary, not terrible, not divine. He looked human. He looked tired. She bowed her head. You came. He nodded. You called. Why now? Because you're ready. For what? He looked past her. Past the skies. Past everything. For the war that matters. And behind him, others followed. Not soldiers. Witnesses. Leaders from other liberated worlds. Survivors who had glimpsed the edge of extinction and pulled back. All of them changed. All of them marked. She recognized none of them. But they all recognized her. The chamber filled. The lights dimmed. No ceremony. No anthem. Only preparation. He spoke once more. From this point on, history begins again. Not with conquest. Not with peace. With resistance. Quiet. Relentless. Unseen. She raised her voice. And if we fail? His answer was final. We won't. No one clapped. No one cheered. They simply turned and began. The war that followed would never be recorded. No victory would be celebrated. No loss would be mourned publicly. But across the galaxy, change began. Systems that had once surrendered now trained in silence. Children were taught not just to survive, but to question. Languages adapted new words for unseen heroes. And in the shadows, the humans remained, not as rulers, not as saviors, but as reminders of what it meant to resist. And on every world touched by Varelia's voice, a monument stood. No name, no symbol, just 5 words carved into stone. They thought we were myths. And beneath it, another line. But they remembered us. Because somewhere out there, hidden in the dark, the last war had already begun. And humanity was ready.